Hey, what's up, Zach here. And I think you're going to be just as surprised watching this video as I was making it, because the Nike Vapor Pro 2 Clay, although yeah, it looks almost identical to the hardcourt version, could not be more of a different performing shoe versus its hardcourt version on clay. And what I mean by that is the tooling of the Vapor Pro 2 just is made more for a clay court that I have found. The tooling of the midsole, obviously the rubber change on the clay court versus the hard court model, but just kind of all around in general, the silhouette of the shoe and just kind of the little features they put on it that I didn't see as anything too exciting on a hard court really come to life on the clay. So I think you're really gonna like this review. I think you're gonna be really surprised by it too. Let's get into it. And as my eye waters uncontrollably from messing with the clay on the shoe and trying to clean them up, I just want to thank Tennis Point USA for sending me a pair of these to check out. If you do want to check out a pair of these or grab one for yourself, make sure you click my link in the description below. All right, let's get into them. But like I said, with the uppers of the Vapor Pro 2 Clay, they're pretty much the same as the all-court version. It's just that they're tailored so much better to a clay court and the footwork for a clay court versus on their all-court version. Now, I know the drag guard here is ultra reinforced for sliding on a hard court, so you're not burning through them. And especially on the lace line here, which I really do like, is that rubber reinforcement all the way up here, and then the laces go underneath the lace line so you don't burn through them or rip them when you're sliding. Now that is great on a hard court, and if you look at the Pro Tour, there actually are a few more people starting to wear the Vapor Pro 2 on the tour, and that's just because, like I said, you get a little bit more grip from those extreme sliding positions, a little more durability out of the shoe from those extreme sliding positions. But if you're just playing recreationally or you're not a huge hard court slider, I mean, most people still do not slide that extreme on a hard court, that they would need an extra high medial ankle collar and rubber reinforcement here. That's more of a pro level or very advanced level feature in a shoe. However, on a clay court, most people are sliding to that extent that their back foot is really extremely everting when it's sliding behind you into a shot. I know with me, I was using the drag guard here in the toe box as well as here in the lace line way more on a clay court than I ever did on a hard court. I found I got just that little bit of extra grip from it, as well as just a little bit extra protection on my foot. I felt a little bit more confident on those sliding on clay court, especially on a clay court that maybe was a little bit more dry and one that I was going to find myself sliding a little bit more into. Now, if you look at the rest of the uppers of the Vapor Pro 2, they are that kind of multi-textile and TPU meshing. If you look at it under the microscope, it is a super tight meshing all the way through the uppers of the shoe. And if you look at it on the breathability test, they heated up 195.5 degrees, cooled down another 110.1. Interesting thing is during it, when I was putting my hand around it, the meshing was getting really hot and the air was pulling from that meshing. However, on every other part of the shoe, it was actually still cold to the touch, even with the heat gun on there. So like I said, they're not going to be the most breathable shoes out there, especially on a super hot hard court. Clay court is not going to heat up as much as a hard court will, so you're not going to feel that as much on a clay court either. And if you look at the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, I mean, the burr barely makes an impression on the toe drag guard. Plus, on the all court version and the clay version, that tread goes all the way up over the toe box, covers a ton of your medial toe box. So, in terms of dragging or sliding, especially on a clay court, I really wouldn't expect these to go anywhere really anytime soon. And getting into the midsole teardown, once again, the clay version exactly the same as the all court version. But what I like a lot about the Vapor Pro 2 on clay versus on a hard court is that, remember, these do not have an internal shank. Now, they do have the Zoom Air unit here in the forefoot, which is nice for a little bit more of a springy feeling on a clay court that might be a little bit softer. You actually, I think, feel a little bit more on clay, actually. But what I like about this is that it's, like I said, it's a much denser phylon underneath your foot. It's really kind of stout there. And on a hard court, it might be just a little bit unforgiving for some people. But on clay, I actually found it to be a little bit more of an asset. The shoe felt a little bit more sturdy underfoot, having all that dense foam under there. So even if the clay under your foot is a little bit softer, you're still getting that feeling of a really stout launch off the first step on these. They do give you just a little bit more beef underneath your foot. And whereas on a hard court, you kind of need to throw an orthotic in these to make it a little more comfortable, and they can be unforgiving. On clay, when the surface is already soft underneath of you, I actually found these to be almost like a football boot, or soccer boot, if you're from the United States watching this. And whereas you kind of need that stiff setup underneath of you to push off the soft grass, that's where I found kind of these to be, where you have a little bit more of a stiff setup underneath of you, gives you a lot more of that launch on a softer or even more of a dry and slippery clay court. So whereas I didn't love it on a hard court as much, I mean, it's good for some people, of course, but on a clay court, I feel like it's much more of an all-around good product for a much wider tennis playing audience. And just looking at that denser filing on the single leg jump height test, got 21 centimeters of single leg jump height, which is pretty good. That Phylon, especially when it's new, does kind of give you a little bit more of a spring up, especially with the Zoom Air unit. Now, you look at the bounce height test, 29 centimeters in the heel, which is pretty standard for Phylon, but 43 centimeters in the forefoot, and that just shows you that that Zoom Air with the Phylon underneath of it, that really stiff Phylon, I should say, just gives it a nice little base to spring back from. And that's kind of a microcosm for these on a clay court, especially if you're up on the balls of your foot. Just gives you that really nice first step launch, even on a softer court. And because the court is a little bit softer, the Phylon on these isn't going to bottom as fast either, because you're not kind of smushing it like a sandwich. So all around, just the tooling of the Phylon just kind of really lends itself to clay. But obviously the biggest difference between the clay and the all-court version, the Vapor Pro 2, is its outsole tread, and it's really the only thing new that they put on the shoe. Now this is 2 pods of kind of herringbone. It is a full-length tread pattern, but like I said, it is broken up into 2 different tread pods. Now, it is mainly herringbone underneath your big toe, but then it widens out into this really wide, almost kind of flatter, more rectangular herringbone, I guess you could call it. Now, in the rear foot, it is reversed, the more chunky herringbone on the lateral side, more flat on the medial side. But when I actually put it on the clay court, and the clay we were playing on is very uneven, there's some spots that are bone dry, there's some that are really well moisturized, and I found that this would grab no matter what was on there, even on the bare spots. What I liked is that this was really a little bit more wide and flat herringbone. It would grab those flat spots really well, because it was almost like grabbing into an asphalt court with a wider pattern, a little more flat. Whereas under the big toe joint, it was grabbing more of kind of that traditional clay. Now on the heel here in the Vapor Pro 2 and in the Vapor 11, yeah, it has a little bit more of a jut out here. It's almost like a medial flange on the heel, that it's supposed to give you a little bit more of push-off power on your medial side when you're pushing off. Now on a hard court, I honestly didn't notice it all that much. I know they talked about it a lot in their press release. However, I didn't notice a ton of extra grip on it. I mean, it was okay. However, on clay, especially when you're trying to push off of more dry spots on the clay court, or kind of more loose, dry clay, I found that this actually helped you in terms of pushing off from compromised positions, or when your foot was really extremely everted, you were getting more of that grip. I don't know if I was really feeling some of the grip from the mud guard and the lace line, or if I was feeling it here from the medial heel, but I think it was a combination of both. But I really did feel that my heel was digging in better when I was trying to push from a slide. So I think, whereas this I think was marketed more for a hard court slider, it actually works better for clay footwork. And speaking of that good push off, you look at the speed ratio of the Vapor Pro 2 clay, they come in at 2.39 versus a 2.3 on their all court version. It's not a huge leap, but it is a difference, especially just for a change in the rubber. Now, if you look at the durometer of the Vapor Pro 2 clay, it comes in at 21.2 versus 21.5 on the hard court version. And honestly, that's probably just operator error on my part. It probably is the exact same rubber. However, there is a weight reduction there. This is lighter rubber than its all-court counterpart, and you really notice it because the all-court counterpart is really, really bottom heavy, versus on the clay version, you don't feel all that bottom heaviness on there. And like I said, it is the same shoe except for that piece of tooling. So for them to get that little bit of weight reduction of the rubber really does just make them feel like a much more feathery shoe underfoot. You just don't get that clunkiness like you do in the hardcourt version. And getting into the fit of the Vapor Pro 2 clay, same as the all-court version, narrow, medium foot can go true to size. Even a 2E can go true to size. It's a little more of a hot dog shape, a little more forgiving in the forefoot. So I mean, for me, my 2E with foot had 0 issues in these going true to size. Now, if you are more of a snake-bitten foot, I probably still would be throwing an orthotic in these. However, like I said, if you are playing exclusively on clay, they're going to be much more forgiving to a lot more different snake bites in your foot. I think for someone with arch pain, as long as the shoe is newer, that Phylon's going to hold it up really well. And ball of foot pain, I still think these are fine for. That Zoom Air unit is wide enough to capture a lot of the ball of your foot. Plus, these aren't super constricting, so anybody with really those ball of foot issues, I think are fine for these shoes. And getting into the all-important playability of the clays, I think we've kind of talked about it all the way through the video, but in terms of all-court movement on a clay court, and in terms of rugged movement on a clay court, I think these are just about the most protective clay court shoes I've tried this year. I have tried a lot of them. You're going to see a lot of clay court videos coming out this year. You may have already seen them in watching this, but if you're watching them in succession as they come out, if you have the notifications turned on. Thank you. But you'll see that there's a lot of them that come out, and this was definitely, I felt like I was like almost the most secure in these. I felt the most confidence in these, kind of getting into more compromised positions or just kind of pushing off really hard. I didn't feel like I was going to slip from underneath of me and like pull a hamstring or a groin or something. I really think if you're buying these as a clay only shoe, I think these are a phenomenal pickup. These are just shoes you can absolutely do battle with, and they're not going to feel as heavy underfoot as they would if you were using their all court counterpart. Now I know someone in the comments is going to ask me, can you use these on a hard court? And I think you can, just because, you know, the herringbone is a little more flat on the outside. Just like I said, don't try to slide on these on a hard court. You may end up catching on that herringbone and you could hyperextend a knee or something. So I don't love these for a hard court slider. But if you're looking for a little bit of a weight reduction on a hard court, you want to wear the Vapor Pro 2, but you don't want the bottom heaviness and you don't want kind of the flatter tread pattern of the all court version, then yeah, this is a kind of a nice compromise. But I just really think with that stiffer phylon, with that really nice first step launch on these, and just a really stout feeling underfoot on a clay court if you're a baseliner or trying to serve and volley or play doubles on that clay court, then I think these are just, you know, kind of an unreal pickup. So I would say, you know, in terms of versus the all court and clay, to me, it's a different shoe. It's just a completely different experience. And that was a really nice surprise for me because I was thinking it was going to be better on clay than hard. I was kind of hoping, just because that was my hypothesis, so I wanted to be proved right. But I was really glad it was actually borne out in the actual playability of the shoe. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. You kind of try to pick one of these up for a clay court, or are you kind of going with something else, a little more of a deeper and chunkier, more kind of monster truck tread pattern on clay? Let me know in the comments down below. And like I said, if you do want to see the other sibling to the Vapor Pro 2 clay, the Vapor Pro 2 all court, or the Nike Vapor 11, make sure you click into this playlist up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you in the next one.